I think you and I both talk a lot about the importance of marketers to measure their impact on pipeline.
Yes.
Right? I mean, if I think about, the sales department, right? The sales department typically has a lot of power, a lot of credibility in the organization. Why? Because they're
They have a quota.
Right? Well, not just that they have a quota. It's interesting. Sales activity is hard to see, hard to measure.
But
the
deals
CFO
are
is not
easy.
seeing that, but the outcome of sales is really easy to see. Hey, there's revenue on the board. Marketing is often the other way around. It's really easy to see all that marketing activity, and the CFO every week is signing checks. So the CFO is seeing all that cost go out the door. It's really hard for the CFO to see the impact of marketing.
That's great.
And so what sales has is they have a pipeline, right? They know how many deals they have in this stage. They know how many deals they have on this stage. They know how many deals that they have in this stage, and they can make predictions about what revenue is going to look like based on knowing how things move through the pipeline.
I love the fact that we're going to talk about the pipeline. I want to spend some time talking about the pipeline because we're very excited about some of the things that we're suggesting to folks.
Yep.
But I want us to remember that customer acquisition is one of the things that we do in marketing. We also are responsible for customer retention
Sure.
and the growth of the value of customers. And so lots of times we get so focused on the acquisition part, we forget that we play a critical role in retention and growth. So I just want to pass that on as an outcome.
It's very important.
But now that we moved to pipelines,
Sure.
I want to spend some time with you talking about that because one of the things that we recommend is that there needs to be what we call a customer buying opportunity pipeline, not a sales pipeline, not a marketing pipeline, but a combined pipeline that looks at it from the customer buying process.
That's what we would call the revenue cycle because it's not a sales cycle. It's
Exactly.
The end-to-end process.
So we call it the opportunity pipeline. And one of the things that has to happen is that systems that companies use, marketing automation systems and CRM systems, sales automation systems, need to work and play together, and they need to be configured properly. Usually, companies configure them from an inside-out point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not even configured by how the customer buys. So one of the things we're trying to help companies understand is how could you change the way you think about the configuration, because that's going to change the way you measure.
Yep.
And we have a lot of common language around contact, suspect, lead, qualified lead, so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That's, again, kind of internally oriented. And one of the things we're suggesting is maybe you need to be looking at contact, for example, how many contacts we're making with opportunities, and then how many of those are we actually connected to.
Mm-hmm.
Because a contact isn't necessarily a connection. And marketing's job is to
Absolutely.
create those connections, right?
I call that an engaged stage.
Well, and then from connection to actual conversation, because
Okay.
you and I, we've had a connection way long time, but then you can have actually a conversation.
Sure.
And that's kind of a deeper level of engagement. And from conversation, you can lead to consideration, right? From consideration to conversion. And then one of the things that needs to be added into the process is community, because customers are more engaged
Yep.
and more in control. And they have a huge amount of influence in the customer
Sure.
community. So we have to add community to the end of that configuration, and what are we really
Yep.
doing? So I think if we
So
look
that's
at...
kind of your new pipeline, your buyer-centric pipeline.
Yes.
And then I think we both agree, it's then very important to really start to measure how people are moving through those stages.
So there's the value measurement, which is how many.
Right.
There's the cost measurement that you brought up earlier. There's also the velocity, how rapidly they're moving.
Yep.
There's the value measurement, how much of them, what do they represent in terms of revenue
Yep.
potential, right? And then, of course, there's the actual win rate. So
Or
what
conversion from stage to stage to stage.
all along.
Yep.
And then, of course, the win rate. Because one of the things that marketers ought to be looking at is what percentage of those opportunities that they put into this pipeline actually, not only was their conversion, the conversion rate compared to non-marketing generated opportunities, the cost compared to non-marketing generated opportunities, but the win rate of marketing generated opportunities.
Yep.
And then ultimately, of course, how did you do compared to what you said you were going to do, your performance target? This is a part of a conversation you and I have had before about how important it is for marketers to set performance targets
Yep.
before they execute. Did you want to spend some time on that? Because I know that's one of your...
Let's come back around to that.
Okay.
I think, staying on pipeline
Oh, sure.
for a minute, you sort of talked about value. I think there's really kind of two pieces to the value metric. There's what I call flow, right? Well, how many people came into this stage? How many came to this stage? Came to this stage.
The conversion.
Well, just numbers first, and then to me,
Yes.
conversion's a percentage.
Yes.
And then there's the balance. Like, how many do I have in this stage? How many do I have in this stage? And the conversion metrics are actually different based on sort of one's your balance statement, one's your income statement.
Yes.
And you have and it's important to kind of look at both of those as well.
I agree.
And then I think looking at the conversions from stage to stage to stage, but then by the type of the lead, right? You talked about, marketing leads look like this, but what about, subtypes of there? Do pay-per-click leads look like this and trade show leads look like this? I think the more you understand the nuances of moving through the pipeline, the more data you have to actually, make those accountability measurements and predictions.
Exactly. And so that brings up the question of data management, right? Because a lot of organizations are really, the explosion of data, right? It's just, we talked about that earlier, it's going to continue to persist and probably even grow.
Yep.
So we're going to have better ways to manage data. Most organizations don't even have, for example, a data inventory.
Yep.
What data do they have? What's it sourced? Where is it kept? Who owns it? How frequently is it updated? How is it defined? That's a basic thing that marketers need to be able to do today, which is, again, kind of perceived as very tedious and labor intensive, but you got to have it because you can't do the analytics without it.